Welcome to the Success Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Tom Simmons. And with us, we have leadership coach Nikki Gianni, born and raised in Queens, living in California. And she's going to go through her background and kind of go through some of her challenges and some of her successes. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. Trucking along, being a solopreneur is very busy.
It is. So if you don't mind taking a couple of minutes and familiarizing our audience and myself with your background and how the leadership coaching vision and entrepreneurship, how all that came into being.
Okay, sure. So I was with the Department of Defense for 25 years. I was active duty for 10 and then civil service for 15. And I was in acquisition for the majority of that time and HR sprinkled in there. And I was a senior leader for 15 of those years, but a supervisor for maybe 18 or 20 of them. So it was like my life, right? Leading people, and it was so much fun. I loved it. And so when it was time for me to say goodbye to that career, I wanted to do something that I really. So one of the main reasons why I stayed for so long in the Department of Defense was because of the mission, right? It's not lining somebody's pockets. It's protecting the nation, right? It's killing bad guys in some way or another, which is great to me. So I wanted to continue to do that, and I wasn't sure how to do that very quickly. But I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I can help people and line my pockets, hopefully.
What was the acquisition? You mentioned that you're with DOD and you were part of the acquisition. What do they acquire?
Oh, well, I've bought everything from construction projects to $18 billion satellite program. I awarded, actually, I was the buyer. I wasn't the contracting officer, but because it's like the judge clerk relationship. That's what the buyer and the contracting officer relationship is like in contracts. So I was the buyer for two $1 billion program contracts to Lockheed and Boeing to do this down select to get the satellite.
Pressure on spending a little bit of going on a shopping spree. Most folks like, oh, go spend $200, you go spend $2 billion.
I know, it was crazy. Well, when I was dealing with space, that was the high ticket, big time. So, but I bought crypto stuff, services, depot maintenance, anything you could think of that has to do with the Air Force.
What is a civil servant versus what you did at the DOD? You made a difference there. So
right.
What are the differences there?
So I was active duty, meaning I wore a uniform for 10 years.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And I was in the military, and then I separated from active duty, and I went and did the same exact job for the most part, but with a different uniform on. So I was a civilian. Okay. And so, because there's lots and lots and lots of civilians that work in the Department of Defense. It's not just military people, because we have to support them because they don't have all the skill set to stay home and do certain things. So yeah, that's what that means. But I got the cool thing is I got to buy in my military time into my civil service time. So I have a full 25 years for retirement. So.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that was an option. They allowed that to transpire. That's a huge benefit.
It's huge. Yeah, because I got more leave faster, and of course I get to count it toward my retirement. So when I turn 60, I get to collect that.
Right. So and then you went to did you transition from civil servant to
entrepreneur?
How long have you been an entrepreneur?
About a year now. It seems like a lot longer.
There's a saying that entrepreneurs are the only people that work 80 hours to avoid working 40.
I don't get it. I thought it was going to be easy, but no. I used to complain all the time about the bureaucracy that I had to deal with, in government. And now I wish I had it because they would do everything for you. You would just be able to concentrate on your thing. And I want to just concentrate on coaching, but I have to do all these other things. So it's definitely interesting. I feel like a toddler, to be honest. I'm like learning so many things. I'm like really walking into this entrepreneur land. But I definitely have a high level of respect for these people because it's scary. You don't know what's going to happen. So no paycheck coming, guaranteed.
There's no guarantee except for change.
Yes.
You have to be think quick on your feet and be adaptable to different situations. So would you say to date, what has been your biggest challenge you face?
Getting in front of people.
As an entrepreneur, it's just finding your audience.
Right. Getting in front of people to be able to talk about what I want to do for them. That's not something that I've ever been trained to do because I was the one who was spending the money, so they would come to me throughout my whole career, I didn't have to go find anybody. Yeah. I did have to recruit. I was a recruiter for, I was an ROTC instructor and a, recruiter for the civilian side, but that was easy because I had this awesome carrot, and I have an awesome carrot too, but it's not as easy to sell for some reason to me. I don't know. I just have to get over that.
So what is when you approach are you looking for other business owners? Are you looking for a leadership team? What do you do?
So that's the hard part to determine, right? So I would love to be able to go into an organization and take care of their leadership and train them, no matter if they're junior or senior, it's fine.
Yeah.
But because I don't know how to necessarily get into that these companies yet, although I think it might be easier than I think, I was focusing on new to mid-level leaders and entrepreneurs who are brand new to hiring, a staff, and now they have to lead people. So that's my focus.
Yeah. Could you give us a snippet of some of the tips and some of the things that advice you would provide someone that maybe has a smaller staff, a smaller company, might be doing, say $3 to $5 million in business, starting to grow, starting to have some success, some traction, and they're struggling with, again, like a lot of entrepreneurs, wearing all the hats: accounting, HR, operations, bill collector, everything. So
when you start growing and you start being able to hire people, take advantage of it, right? I mean, you have to figure out how to get the right people in your shop. But once you have them, delegate everything, as much as you can, so that way you can think about the things that that are most important to the business, whatever those are, right? And in today's world, so in my program, it's the new CEO, new school CEO, right? So it's not old school, right, but new school, right? So we have to adapt and be fast to trust people and to empower people, because that's what people want now. They don't want to be, led by the nose everywhere. People want to have freedom. They don't want to be micromanaged. So you have to be able to do that, or else you're not going to retain them, because it costs so much money to hire people, and time and everything else. So you want to keep the people you hire, right? So yeah, that's definitely very important. Empower and trust them. You have to trust them, and they have to trust you. And so go ahead.
That's huge. Having them trust you as a leader, you as the organization. Used to be 40, 50 years ago, you went to school, went to, graduated, went to college, they trained you for a job, and you're at that job for 30, 40 years, and you had some sense of security. That security has been gone for probably the past decade and a half, 2 decades.
At least, yeah.
It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I have a friend who doesn't have a pension.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky that I have a pension. But yeah, I mean, so you have to be able to, build trust quickly, because people are kind of like, almost 1 foot out the door, like, okay, well, do I have to jump and, jump ship and go to someplace else because you might not be good enough, or, not making enough money, whatever the case may be. So it's very, very, very important for a leader to have empathy. You have to have empathy.
And there was a saying that I came across probably last year, was 10 before 10. As a small business, make it a goal to delegate 10 tasks or 10 things before 10 a.m.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
And you look at your whole day and use Pareto's law, 80-20 rule, right?
Right.
Look at 80% of non-value add. And that's what you want to delegate, so you can focus on the critical moments, the big wins, the fires you got to put out.
Right.
But when you mentioned the 1 foot out the door, or aka Plan B,
yes,
I think that in part has driven the gig economy, where they will go out in the Uber or the Lyft, or they'll do, on some of these Fiverr and different websites, they have a skill set. They'll what's moonlight is I guess the correct
there's
term.
There's avenues to make money, like gap money, I guess you can say, right?
Right. Yeah. So I think that's contributed, that not having that security has really contributed to everyone having a plan B and all of that. So
that's interesting. That's a good point.
Were to take your leadership principles that you've learned from being in the military, from being a civil servant, and working around some leaders and some folks who have obviously mentored you in leadership, and I guess the reason for a leadership coach is to help them develop a team and develop those skill sets they need to lead a team where leadership may not come naturally to them.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, because how many people do you know that were good technicians and they got hired to get promoted because that was the natural progression of things, and that's what the baby boomer generation did. So then that's what most giant corporations do, right? You bide your time and you get the job eventually. I heard somebody said that to me when I was, in a resource management job. And I was like, oh no, you just did not say that to me, right? Please do not say that again. But yeah, but when these people go into leadership positions, a lot of them don't want to, but they feel like they have to. So it's really important for those folks to get as much training as possible and to be able to talk about what the situation is like, so they can, get it out and not take it out on their employees or their spouses or whatever, and to get some advice, so ICF is it's a certification. It's an international coaching federation. Okay. And that's like this, pretty much the gold standard for coaches, for life coaches, like in that category.
Oh,
wow. But they don't want you to give advice. They want you to do pure coaching, which is just like, well, tell me more about that. Well, why do you think that happened? Or, asking a lot of questions so the client answers them the issue themselves in the end, and it works. But when I'm talking about when you're talking about something like a leadership coach or a business coach or something like that, where people are coming to you because they don't know what the answer is for real, they don't. I think it's important to be able to give them the answers, so or give them guidance. So I consider myself a coach and a mentor. That way I don't, break the rules for ICF.
There you go. You mentioned the word technician, which leads me to the E-Myth by Michael Gerber, a book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I assume, based on that one word, how you phrase that, you've read that book. What books would you recommend for an entrepreneur or someone that's in working to build up their leadership skills?
So I love this one. It's called It's Your Ship.
Okay.
And it's by a Navy captain. I can't remember his name right now, but I can send it to you. I can send you the link from Amazon. It's Your Ship. And he basically took this this ship that was in dire straits. It was like a mess. No, everybody wanted to get out and leave and run away. And within a 2-year period, he changed it completely and he turned it around. And it was mainly because of empowerment, right? So a lot of people think that military leadership is just, rah, 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 very, what is that one called? Directing, right? Or, those 4 different leadership types.
Right.
But it's not, but sometimes people still think it is. And so they don't give them any leeway to do anything. So one of the good examples that they had in that book was this kid who was, he was a painter, and every time he turned around, when they got into dock, they had to paint the ship because it was all full of rust.
Right.
Right. Because these
rub the rust, prime it, and paint it.
So these washers were not stainless steel, and they're in water. Okay, they're in salt water.
Oh my gosh!
So of course there's going to be rust down there. So he goes to the captain and he says, "Sir, can I buy stainless steel ones so I don't have to paint these anymore?" And he's like, "Of course. How much is that going to save us in the long run from paint and from and time?" And so, and he said that to somebody before, but nobody wanted to listen to him. He's like, "That's the way we do it."
That's the whole. That's the mindset you don't want.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
and that's a very common government thing. That's the way we've always done it.
Well, that's even in private industry as well. You remember Blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
There was a Blockbuster in every corner. You had to go for the Gen X and millennials that have no idea what I'm talking about. Blockbuster was a store where they rented a VHS tape. They walk into the store, browse the movies, rent it for $3 or $4, and return it the next day. If you didn't return it, you got charged like $1.50 late fee.
Yeah, they'd rip you off.
Yeah. So, but Blockbuster was then replaced started being replaced by Redbox. And then Redbox was one up by Netflix. Netflix was delivered, CDs to your door, and different model. Well, they put Blockbuster out of business.
That's right.
Because of their thought process and their approach it was just, well, this is the way this is always going to be done.
Right.
And they didn't assess their SWOT analysis, their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Well, that was an external threat. They maybe saw it, maybe didn't. If they did see it,
right.
It's just how it's always been done.
So going off of that vein, which was great. So Henry Ford said, if I would have done what they wanted, I would have built them I would have given them a faster horse.
Right.
Right. So same thing with the typewriter. I mean, you can think of so many things that are like non-existent anymore, and you have to be adaptable, Yeah. Change is good. Gray is the way, like be happy about it and make it a game, make it fun as opposed to terrifying.
Right. Exactly. So that was one book. It's Your Ship. Do you have maybe one more book that really just spoke to you?
Any of the John Maxwell books are awesome. Maxwell. He's just so good. He's so wise and he's eloquent in the way he speaks. And I really love him. Anything that you can think of. I have like a stack of them over there. But I think a really good one, hold on one second, I'm going to look at it right now, is what successful people know about leadership. That's what the most recent one that I read, and it was really cool.
Awesome. So when we were, you sent something over to me, and the question was, what is your biggest success to date? And I read an article yesterday about the pay range and, going from like just the different branches of the military and their duties, what all entailed. But you say one of your biggest successes to date was getting promoted to GS 15 at 34. And mostly when you're getting into those higher numbers, you have to be there for 15, 20, 25, 30 years.
Right. That's how it used to be.
Promoted at 34.
Yeah.
Could you go into a little bit of that?
Sure. So we had this crazy bathtub effect, is what we called it in contracting, where all of our knowledge was leaving, right? And there was this big void, right, of lack of leaders. They were just dropping out. They're like, okay, peace, I'm leaving, I'm done with this nonsense, and so the young ones were left behind, right? And I just was in the right place at the right time, and I worked hard, and I loved my job. And so I was able to progress very quickly when I became a civilian. So got out as a captain, which is an O3, right? And I made it to an O6 equivalent in like 2.5 years. And that would have taken me like 15 years to do, So, because they have different time and grade requirements. So yeah, and it was awesome. And I was one of the youngest people that ever got it in that organization. Me and the one other guy. He was I think he was 32. But yeah, both of us got promoted at the same time, and it was a big deal. GS 15 is in the government when that's the pinnacle. I mean, you could go higher with the general equivalent, right? SES, it's called Senior Executive Service, but that's a whole different ball of wax, So yeah, and then I had to leave. I married an Army guy, and he got promoted at the same time I did as well. And so he had to move too. So I'm like, dude, man, come on. So we went to we kind of tried to map it out as best as possible for my career. So we went to San Antonio, and I stayed with the same organization. So I had to take a downgrade, but then the chief left 6 months after I got there, and so I walked into that job, and I did it for like free for like about a year, just like I did the other one, a year. Yep. So I work for free. You work for free, you get promoted early.
There you go. Moral of the story. That is impressive. I don't think so. I have some family members that have been in the military. I've done some research on. It's just always intrigued me the rankings and how they rank folks and serve folks. That is very, very impressive.
Oh, thank you. I'm very proud of that.
So, in your life. Just not just military or an entrepreneur, what are some of the toughest challenges you face, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I've been stationed at 8 different bases, over 25 years. So I moved a lot.
Every 3 years.
Yes. And 3 of the states I lived in twice. I've been in 10 states, and I've lived in 3 of them twice. But yeah, so 8 different bases. And every base, so even if almost all of them were Air Force, except for one, I went to Navy was my last assignment. And you would think Air Force is Air Force. No. And people are different all around the country. So I'm a New Yorker, okay? The Northeast people have no filter, okay? like we are very blunt and honest, and to the point. We don't dance, beat around the bush, we just don't have time for that, I guess. And I like it that way because it's easy, right? You might get your feelings hurt a little bit occasionally, but at least it's over with and you can move on. Well, the rest of the country does not think that way. So going to San Antonio from Boston was very challenging. They thought I was mean. They thought I was talking down to them, this and that. And I'm like, guys, I'm like the nicest person ever. What are you talking about?
But where that came from, where New Yorkers and Northeast, it could be from standing out in the cold, having to say what you got to say quick to get back inside. Maybe I don't know, but
I think it's just the people too. It's condensed, so you have to move fast and think fast. Yeah. But I adapted, and then they didn't want me to leave when I had to leave. So, which was really nice to hear, because the guy I supported, the colonel I supported, didn't recommend me for the promotion.
Oh my God.
And so I walked over there, and I'm like, why didn't you do it? And he told me all these ridiculous things that had nothing to do with my performance. Nothing.
Wow.
And it was just like silly stuff. Like he's like, oh, well, you have this big cup that you bring on the conference room table. And I'm like, what? I went home and I told my ex-husband, and he was like, I was like, yeah, so I'm gonna bring an even bigger mug next time, you know.
That's so New York.
He's like, don't do that. I was gonna bring a 64-ounce ones from Circle K, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, and then he didn't want me to go. He's like, Nikki, it's bad for your career to go, and it was bad. But I had to, you know, stay with the family, right? So, because I took a downgrade to get there, and I never got to go back up again. But that's okay. But yeah, so the whole point of me telling you all that was moving and being the new guy all the time can be challenging. You know, I use it to my advantage as much as possible. And I win over people fairly quickly. You know, I'm very empathetic, and you basically have to be empathetic to them, and you have to listen, and you have to tell them, you guys are the ones who are doing the work, not me. I'm here to support you. So you need to tell me how you want to do it.
Right.
And it worked every time. You know, I won them over, and we ended up having great organizations that were in the trash can before I got there. You know, so it was a lot of fun to see them morph into goodness, and just leadership. I mean, I'm not a fantastic contracting person. I mean, I don't have a lot, you know, in you know, tactical experience with contracts, but I have the leadership skills to be able to navigate things that it doesn't matter if you have that skill or not.
So I guess you're an effective communicator. You know, and you communicate using being direct, but also showing empathy.
Right. Yeah, you have to
sum up your style there. But so how do you define success? What does success look like for you?
That's a really good question. I think for me, it's happiness and joy. You know, I mean, so no matter what you have to do to get there is another story, right? Because you're happy for different reasons in different parts of your life, right? So happiness for me now is, you know, I have a beautiful house in Southern California. I have a great son, you know, and I'm doing this thing that I've wanted to do for so long that, I mean, I'm going to get to do it.
When you lead teams of people consistently for 25 years, you pick up things that can't really be taught. It's just the small nuances, the things that just maybe your thought process, things that is being part of a larger organization like the DoD. I mean, it's a smaller organization, right? It's not very big.
Oh, no.
That's sarcasm. If
a third of the budget, you know.
Department of Defense is a massive organization. When you're part of a massive organization, you pick up and you learn how a large corporation or a large bureaucracy works. And
right.
For you to be noticed, stand out, and excel and lead teams of people, you're going to make a great coach. You pick up so many nuances that you can go to the ICF and they can't teach you some of the things you've learned.
No, they can't. And that's what I want to share with my clients is, you know, these are the things that I didn't know when I first started, or even in the middle, you know. I mean, why put you through the trial and error? Now, granted, I must say, if they're like most people, they might have to learn it themselves anyway, but at least they know about it, right? At least I could tell them about it, because then they'll be more prepared when it does happen. But hopefully they won't do that like teenager type thing and, you know, have to do it anyway, like my son. But yeah, I mean, all these little things that I learned, and I learned most of them from bad supervisors.
Then what not to do or what to do from what someone else's mistakes were.
Right. I'm like, oh my Lord, that is not a good thing to do. I'm never going to do that. And I'm going to do exactly the opposite, you know? And it stuck with me really deeply, as opposed to when you have a good supervisor and a good boss, it's kind of just like easy, right? You know, you don't have to worry. You don't have to, you're not on your toes or necessarily all the time. And so, yeah, I want to be able to share that with people and save them some pain.
So, last question, and I love this question. I'm going to ask you, if you could have one person, either in the past or present, you could take to dinner or just have some time and talk to them, who would that be, and what were some of the questions you'd ask that person?
Oh, hands down, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay, that's a new one. Why?
He's my hero because he is the epitome of the American dream. I was a bodybuilder for 15 years or so, like when in my young days, and he was the god of bodybuilding, right? And so whenever we didn't want to go, what's that?
I said him and Cole,
Ronnie Coleman.
Ronnie Coleman, yes.
Yeah. I mean, so whenever we were like, didn't feel like working out, we put on Pumping Iron, and watch that documentary and be like, okay, we got to go get the pump, But then for him to like come to the United States and, make millions before he even was in TV and in movies, with real estate and whatnot. And then to be the governor of California, I mean, really? Like, that's just insane to me. I got to vote for him when I lived there for the first time. It's just, wow. They were even talking about like changing the Constitution for him to be president and stuff. That's a little crazy, but no, he's so smart and he's so funny, and he knows how to have, discipline and focus. I mean, you don't get to do what he does just by having a good time, So what I would ask him, I don't know. I would ask him so many different things, I think. I guess I would ask him how he stays disciplined even when he doesn't want to do something. What is his trick? What is his thought process? Because that's a very difficult thing to get over, sometimes. Yeah. So that'll be interesting to know.
Well, if you ever meet him, we'd love to have him on this podcast.
I'll let him know. Maybe we'll run into him in Venice. I live in Southern California, so
there you go.
And he rides his bike around there.
Oh, does he really? Oh, my goodness! Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, he goes to the gym.
Mm-hmm. Well, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tom. I appreciate it. Have a good one, everybody.
Take care.